and welcome to Victory Points. I'm Becca Scott.
I'm Jake Michels.
And this is a podcast about people who love tabletop games, interviewing other people who love tabletop games about the tabletop games they love. Our guest today is, drumroll, Scott Gaeta! Boom, boom. The mastermind behind Renegade Game Studios, a 20-year veteran of the gaming industry, hails from San Diego, California. I didn't actually write a bio for you down.
That's okay.
You're just Scott Gaeta. Everybody should know who you are.
Really?
Well,
yeah.
You called me a mastermind, so I kind of like that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how I think of you.
Did you ever play the game Mastermind?
It's a great game.
Is it?
Yeah.
I don't need to play
It's
it. 'cause
old
apparently
school.
I am a mastermind.
There's like
It's true.
The picture of Mastermind that I have from my childhood, I think has Orson Welles sitting in a chair just looking at the camera, and
What?
that's the title. That's the cover of that game.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Like-
Mine was very plasticky with little colorful pegs.
Yes, that's the game. But like there was a weird unattached picture of some regal-looking man. It was either Orson Welles or someone who looks a lot like him.
Like what
Was
era?
it Scott Gaeta
The
who time traveled to the
1971?
past?
Like 1971
Yeah, so
Orson
his
Welles?
beard and fat, but
Yeah.
like he still had good.
Yeah.
Oh,
He
then
had
it
that
wasn't
jawline
Scott.
still, or jowl line, I should say.
Jowline.
Scott,
Yes.
for people who don't know, what is Renegade Game Studios and when did you create it?
So Renegade Game Studios is a tabletop game publisher.
What?
Yeah. And it's celebrating its 5-year anniversary this month.
Yay!
Uh-huh.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah.
So you tell me all about how you first got into being on the other side of the world of tabletop, because obviously you've been a lifelong gamer.
Yep. Yeah. So lifelong gamer, started as a kid in middle school playing D&D, right? During lunch was a very popular thing to do.
During lunch.
During lunch hour in a middle school, a bunch of kids sitting at a table playing D&D with their lunch. I can't tell you how popular we were. That was incredible. Like, we were the envy of the school.
Really?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
That's amazing.
Yep. Yeah, it was
Prom king, prom queen, was
Oh,
dungeon master, and yeah,
in
and
the making,
elf,
for
yeah.
sure. Yep.
I assume that you're not being sarcastic.
No.
Or
not
some-
at
Yeah,
all.
it is sarcastic.
It is sarcastic, yeah.
Oh, see,
No, I
that
mean-
sounds pretty cool to me.
No, I would say for the most part, I don't have any memories of like us being picked on or anything else. Maybe we were just oblivious to it or just didn't care. But I think we were just
People
normal
probably just
kids
didn't
doing
bother.
kid
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
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 Man.
So that was.
I was terrified to do it in public. We always hid under the code name, like, do you guys want to go play football? And none of us played football. That's
awesome.
We definitely did not play football.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we were at an age, right, where you don't know whether or not like it's a really big deal. You're just in that, we're just doing kid stuff and whatever.
That's great.
Right. By
The
high
age of
school
innocence.
age.
Yeah, then you're super self-conscious about it.
Yeah, that's a different story.
for sure.
Really?
Yep.
Okay.
But so then later on, fast forward, I owned a game store.
What was it
and
called?
It was called Collector Mania in Parker, Colorado.
Ooh.
It is still there to this day.
Where is Parker?
Parker, Colorado is a Denver suburb about 45 minutes outside of Denver, like southeast of Denver.
Okay.
Yeah. it's pretty
Collector
cool.
Mania.
Collector Mania. Yeah, because I started off like with comic books and movie posters and things like that. I had a movie poster business that sold posters and all that sort of stuff.
You've done everything.
All sorts of crazy stuff.
Okay, so then it became more of a game store, trading cards specifically.
Yeah, so right, Magic had taken off a few years
I'm
before
familiar.
that. Yeah, it's a little game. It's still going. It's hanging on by a thread, I hear.
Right. Just
Yeah.
a thread. I never talk about it on this podcast.
No, I'm sure. Yeah, and then I started with the Star Wars Collectible card game came out, and that was huge. And I got on the radar of a company called Decipher that published that game. And I started doing contract work for them for a few years, doing marketing programs and in-store play programs and that sort of stuff.
What year was this?
Oh, when I first, 98,
Okay.
probably
but
with them.
Was that still, like, the Star Wars CCG, I feel like, only lasted for a kind of a short time, didn't it?
Yeah,
Scott's got stories about that.
Yeah, it went away right after episode 1 came out.
Right.
So
right.
they're like, this was a big deal in the industry too. That game was riding high. It was like a close second to Magic.
It was popular for a while. Yeah.
it was huge.
I remember it.
Until ... They tried to take back the rights, right?
No, yeah. So what happened is that Decipher put out all the product through episode 1, but their contract was up. And when they went to renew it, they didn't get a renewal because at that time, Hasbro had acquired Wizards of the Coast. And Hasbro was the master toy license for Star Wars and said, we want everything. We want everything.
Give us thing.
Yeah, it was a huge deal.
They never developed a CCG with it, did they?
They did. So it was a Richard Garfield CCG that came out.
It was?
Yeah, it was.
Didn't know that.
Totally,
The originator of magic.
Yeah, the originator of magic, but very unmagic-like. So you rolled dice for combat. So it didn't go over very well with the hardcore Star Wars CCG, where it was a traditional, very strategic, hardcore, collectible card game, and now you were rolling dice for combat. So,
and also Star Wars was pretty different at the time in that like you had to play one side, you had to play the light side or the dark side, right?
Yeah, that's
Whereas
the way our
Magic
game worked.
you could just choose a different color combination.
Yeah.
And then I always forget, but like the expansions were based on the movies, right? Like different chapters of the movies.
Yeah, so the game started off like with Premiere, and then it basically just went in chronological order. So it took us years to get to, right, like Death Star 2 was the big set where it had the Emperor and Luke as a Jedi Knight.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So that was a big deal. But yeah, it was a fantastic game. I would say that game was probably most important to me becoming a professional because that was the thing that got me on Decipher's radar and eventually led to a job and me relocating and selling my store and all that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was that, do you look back and you're like, best decision I ever made? Or was it a big scary thing at the time?
I don't know. It's kind of weird, right? Like, I think I would have still gone into marketing and product development and that sort of career path, but I probably would be doing this as a hobby potentially and making horrible things, right? Like
horrible.
Well,
you would have walked in an independent door, maybe.
Yeah, or I would have wound up in like the general consumer products world, and I'd be making paper towels or something. And that's all right.
Let's talk about your paper towel collection because that's actually why I brought you on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's really cool.
You can make them out of bamboo now.
That's
I hear,
amazing.
So that's cool.
Really?
Okay.
Why?
Well, then you went to Cryptozoic Entertainment, or you co-founded it. Yes.
I did, but in between that, after Decipher, I was at Upper Deck actually.
Oh yeah.
So
we know them. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I was there. I moved to San Diego finally. I had always wanted to move to San Diego and relocate. The first time I was in San Diego was in 1992 at San Diego Comic-Con.
And you were like, I'm going to live here someday.
Yep, pretty much. I was like, this is awesome. It might have had something to do with Comic-Con too, right? There's that whole thing. Like when you go somewhere on vacation, you're like, I want to be on vacation my whole life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Nerds
but
come here every year. This is the Mecca.
yeah. No, it was cool. And I went back a bunch of different times. Yeah, and then eventually Upper Deck and did things like, Marvel and DC and World of Warcraft. And then, that led to me leaving Upper Deck and founding Cryptozoic Entertainment with 3 other partners. We started with World of Warcraft TCG. We took that over after Upper Deck lost it and then did that for a while. But most of my career up until that point had been really focused on doing games based on licenses. Right. So all these big movie, TV, and comic book franchises. And I hadn't really had an opportunity to do original development and do things where we could create our own worlds and not have to play in somebody else's sandbox. And that was a big part of why I wanted to go and start Renegade, because I just really wanted to do something different. Like I'd kind of been there, done that. I'd spent almost my first 15 years doing all this licensed stuff. And I'd learned a lot from it, especially at Decipher, a lot about top-down game design, right? A lot of licensed games sometimes have this stigma to them where people think that they're just going to kind of be a license slapped on something.
Sure.
Right.
And that was never Decipher's design philosophy. It was always top-down design. We need to start with a game experience that's going to be true to that world. Because if a Star Wars game doesn't feel like a Star Wars experience, that's not going to make the core fan base happy. So it has to be a good Star Wars game first and foremost, and then a good game, right? If a gamer plays it that's not a Star Wars fan and doesn't like it, that's kind of okay because the Star Wars fan has to like it first.
Yeah,
Oh, I love
sure.
that.
Yeah, but
yeah,
you want to
absolutely.
hit both, right? Like the best thing is to make everybody happy and hit both. But if you can only hit one, you've got to be true to the fan base that.
That's a great
Absolutely. Those are the
concept, yeah.
diehards. They're gonna want to collect it just to collect it.
Right. And why would I?
You make something Dresden Files, I'm gonna get it.
Right. Why would I play a Power Rangers game if it doesn't feel like Power Rangers?
Which you've recently picked up. Was Power Rangers a part of your personal fandom?
It wasn't. I was not of the Power Rangers generation. I was I was definitely aware of it from, it was a phenomenon in the 90s and continued for, now it's 26 years old this year.
I was gonna say Jake over here grew up loving Power Rangers.
I did?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah. I was
Okay,
also
Xander Generati.
I did like them. I only watched the first season of it. I didn't know any of the.
You were able to quote specific anecdotes from specific episodes.
Was I?
Excuse me
I watched
for
it.
assuming.
I watched it for 6 months or so. I was more of the Ninja Turtles and Ghostbusters era.
Solid.
But yeah, for sure. Power Rangers was a really fun game and actually did have a lot of nostalgia for me, for sure. Not to the Xander level for any points, but
that's fair.
Yeah, I feel that was a good example of a design philosophy that was kind of emulated, going and fighting the putties and the bosses.
We should mention we're talking about Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid, designed by Jonathan Yang and published by Renegade Game Studios.
Nice, you didn't even read that.
I didn't read it. I'm getting better, Jake.
At pushing Renegade's products.
Specifically at that, yeah.
Nice. We're indoctrinating you. Pulling you in.
Because the things you make and you choose to make are so dang good. Thanks. And so could you talk to us about what the philosophy of Renegade was and what kind of games you choose to develop and how you choose them?
So again, when we started the company, we wanted to do original stuff. But we also started with what a lot of people would call gateway games, right? So light, family friendly, not mass markety, but accessible to the core hobby market, but also that a new gamer coming in, it would be a good first experience for them. So something you can just pick up, quickly set up and play, and have a 30-minute experience and have fun, and then move on to something else or just play it again. So we started off with that. And then we slowly moved into more traditional, heavier Euro type games. And we did some that we brought in from European partners and some that we developed ourselves internally. And then we also branched out into things like role-playing games with Overlight. And there's a funny story behind that. I've told this before, but it never gets old for me.
Well, not to us and not on this podcast.
So Sarah Erickson came to work for me about 18 months in. And Sarah and I had worked together previously, and I said to her, I love RPGs. They're probably my favorite thing to play, but they're not a great business. So your job, Sarah, is to keep me from we should never publish an RPG at Renegade because it's not a good use of my time, and we should not focus on that. And blah, 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 right? And I gave her this whole thing. I'm like, your job is to keep me in check.
I'm hiring you specifically to keep me away from RPGs.
Not specifically, but it's I hate yes men. You need to, if you see me doing something that I'm telling you it's a bad thing.
No women.
That's right. no women.
You got yes men, you got no women.
Oh, right. That's right. Exactly.
Women that say no.
That's right. I've got a lot of those. We've got a lot in our company.
I think you're one of 2 men I've seen on your.
There's 3 of us now. Three men out of 12. So,
wow,
in the company. Yeah, no, it's pretty cool.
Estrogen heavy.
Yeah. But so then we were sitting about 6 months later. I was in Fort Wayne for a distributor event, and I was sitting down with some guys that are pretty heavy into RPGs, and one of them they weren't even pitching me. We were just talking about ideas and different things, and he brought up this really cool, fantastic high fantasy world that wasn't Tolkien based. It was inspired by progressive rock of the 70s and all this crazy stuff, and told me the whole story. And I was like, that's awesome. If I ever was going to do an RPG, I want to do something really, really different. So let's do that and let's make it. And it was what turned out to be Overlight. And Sarah was...
Then the floodgates opened.
Oh, yeah. And Sarah was sitting right next to me, and I turned to her and I was like, man, it's only been 6 months and you already failed. So, but yeah, our overall philosophy has been, we didn't want to be, early on people would say, what kind of games does Renegade make? And I would just say fun games, right? We didn't want to be the company that only made gateway games or only did heavy Euros or only did RPGs. We wanted to kind of have something for everybody. And part of the philosophy is if you join us with one of our games that is a gateway game, then the next step that you take, we want to have something for you. Or if you discover role-playing games, we want to have something for you as well. So we kind of want you to be able to dabble within the whole family of Renegade games and not have to look elsewhere, right? Like we want to kind of keep you in the family.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Similar to Netflix's philosophy. Never, ever leave.
That's right.
That is, I was like, okay, Scott, there is a flavor of Renegade. Like when I think of Renegade, there is a certain image that comes to mind, but I can't nail down exactly what it is. And it's exactly that I don't think of just one type of game or feeling of the game experience. I think of every type of gradient of difficulty and crunchiness of game that there is something that you have. I would say probably the crunchiest Euro game is Architects of the West Kingdom and that whole line.
Yeah, his next one. So Architects is crunchy. The next one coming out, Paladins, that comes out this fall, is probably the heaviest game that Shem and Sam have done to date. It's really good.
I've already asked you guys to send me a copy.
Yeah,
So.
that's right. I think
that's part of like a trilogy of games or a world of games, because there's Crusaders as well, or Voyagers or something.
No, so the first trilogy was the North Sea trilogy, right?
Sea,
where it was
Raiders,
Explorers, Raiders, and Shipwrights.
Shipwrights.
Yep. So there was those three, and that's the North Sea, right? Vikings,
which are exploration. Like, how would you define those games? Are those worker placement as well?
So each one has. So Raiders is definitely worker placement. Explorers is tile laying, and kind of you're building out your map. And Shipwrights has worker placement and a little bit of
like a mix of both.
Yeah, a little bit mix of both, a little bit of engine building. And then the West Kingdom trilogy is the next trilogy, and he's got more plans. So this one moves to like a different part of the world, but kind of different era.
Yeah,
but it's not.
It's a little more Renaissance-y.
Yeah, it's not 100% historically accurate, right?
Well,
like it's inspired by these periods in history, but these aren't history lesson type games.
Sure.
But yeah, Paladins is the next one, and then there will be another game in a year that he hasn't announced the title yet, so I don't want to spoil it for him. But that'll cap out the trilogy, and then you'll have the West Kingdoms trilogy.
And by trilogy, they're set in the same world, given the same aesthetic design, but are connected, not in like game to game in any way.
So they are totally standalone. For the North Sea trilogy, Shem designed a small box that allowed you to play through all of them as a campaign.
That's what I was interested in. Yeah.
Yeah. The saga.
Those are the words that I needed you to say.
Because I haven't played any of the North Sea stuff, and I'm looking at it now. I'm like, okay, if that happens, I'm interested to try it.
So what is included in the box?
So the box has, I can't remember the name of the currency that's in there. So you're basically trying to become like what's the name of like the big Viking leaders, like the Jarls, right?
Jarl, yeah.
Yeah. So you're playing through.
The Valhalliest?
Yes,
Okay.
that's the technical term. I didn't want to go there because I thought it was a little too highbrow for your.
It's old school, yeah. I don't want to get it.
But you're playing through the trilogy, and there's elements that move from game to game, and that have a consistent thread through it. And at the end, you can be,
whoever's acquired the most from their most success through the three games.
Exactly.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, it's neat.
Yeah,
I love that. So, your first big hit was it Lanterns?
I would say so. It's probably so Lanterns is an interesting story that we didn't design that in-house. So that was from Randy Hoyt over at Foxtrot. So like part of the studio's model is we work with partners that
co-publishing.
Yep, right, exactly. Because we can't do everything, and it expands our bandwidth and allows us to have a bigger footprint as far as what we can draw from. And Randy, I didn't know him at the time. And he worked with a designer in Canada, Chris Chung, and it was his very first game.
What?
Yep.
Wow.
It's a brilliant game.
Yep.
Tile laying as well.
Yeah. No, it's great. And they had put it on Kickstarter, and I saw it right after the Kickstarter ended, like the day after I had missed it. And I watched the video, and I looked at it, and I was like, I wish
I want.
Yeah, I wish I would have seen this game. I totally would have published it. And then I went to BGCon, and I asked Randy, I was like, hey, man, what's your plan after Kickstarter? Because and
he was like, I don't know.
Yeah, and I said to him, here's my impression is games go to Kickstarter and they do okay, and then there's no plan afterwards, and you wind up printing 500 extra copies, and then a year later you have 490 extra copies in your garage, and now it's Christmas presents for everybody for the rest of your life. And he goes, well, it's funny you should mention that. I did another game a year ago called Relic Expedition, and I have 500 copies sitting in my garage. And I said, well, I think we can help each other out. So then, yeah, we made a deal to co-publish, and from there, at that point forward, we co-publish all Foxtrot's games. Yeah.
Amazing. Because looking at the list of everything Renegade has put out in just 5 years, which is crazy. That's such a short amount of time. And you have so many games, but we're giving away your secret right here. Yeah. It's co-publishing. You just
part of it. I mean, and then we design a fair amount in-house as well. But you know, like what you were saying as far as our family of games, in my head, I kind of picture our catalog. Like everybody's like we've all been to Disneyland or Disney World, right?
Sure.
So I picture our catalog in my head like the Disneyland map.
Yeah. Well, I flipped through it recently in one of the mini games that you stuffed down my throat. There's so many Renegade games sitting at home now.
Oh, you got the box? Did we send you just like, hey,
everything?
Here's the box? Like send Becca.
No, because I declined that. I'm like, no, I want this one and I want this one.
Oh, okay.
And then I will take all the small boxes home from Gen Con.
Okay.
But yeah. Sorry, Disneyland.
Yeah, so no, just in my head, that's kind of the way I picture the catalog, right? Like you walk down Main Street and like these are the gateway games. We'll bring you in.
This is your introduction to our world.
Yeah, exactly. But then if I want to go play RPGs, I'm going to go over to RPG Land, or I'm going to go over to Heavy Euro Land, or some of this other stuff that we're working on for the future. So
secrets.
Yeah. So
then what does like an independent game maker who is in that situation that the Kickstarter guy was in of like. How do they approach you for an opportunity, I guess?
Oh, you're going to get a flood of emails.
Well, we do have game designers who are listening to this kind of stuff, and it doesn't necessarily that they would come to you. How would they approach any company?
But you should go to Scott first if it's a really good game.
If it's a really good game, bring it to Scott.
So, for the most part, it is just doing pitches. I haven't done this the last couple years, but about 3-4 years ago, I would go to Gen Con, and ahead of time, I would put out my schedule and say, I have all these 30-minute slots available, and I would sit and listen to pitches every 30 minutes for 4 days straight.
Wow!
But now you got a guy for that. I saw it.
Yeah, Dan does some too, but as we've kind of built relationships with designers, and we tend to work with the same designers more than once, because once you develop that nice working relationship, it just shortens the window, right, of having to even go through that pitch. And it's interesting now, a lot of the stuff that we have coming up in the next couple of years, we've reverse pitched. It's me going to a designer that we've worked with and saying, I have an idea for, we should do a game that's like this, that has these qualities to it, that brings out this sort of player experience, that plays in this amount of time, that does this thing. Do you want to take that on and see what you can come up with? So
that's cool.
I just talked about a game I know you did this for last episode in my unabashed, unsponsored, sponsored by Renegade episode of Gen Con reviews. And Gates of Delirium was this way, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's Jordan and Mandy who made Lotus, which is a beautiful gateway game.
Yeah.
But actually just gorgeous. You're building flowers. I mean, come on.
Right.
And you wanted to make it psychotic.
Yeah. That's pretty much it. I liked the card mechanic as far as building the flowers and everything, and then we had some ideas to do some other stuff. So I went and pitched Jordan and Mandy on what eventually became Gates of Delirium, and they ran with it, and they did a great job and definitely put their own twist on everything. But yeah, that's a perfect example of they didn't come to us with that. Like we said, hey, we want to do something with this and see if we can go in a different direction with it and make it psychotic.
Yeah.
All right,
Make
Scott,
it maddening.
we have so many more questions about Renegade Game Studios and your history and how you come up with these what-if questions to develop a game and reverse pitch it. But first, a short break. Welcome back. We're here with Scott Gaeta of Renegade Game Studios and citizen of the world.
Citizen of the world?
Yeah.
Oh, that's very nice.
Mastermind, obviously, we've already mentioned. Okay, so...
Can I have a volcano lair at some point?
I imagine you do. Don't you live between two mountains already?
Ensuring that's a nightmare, though.
Yeah, I live in... Oh, that's true. I live in San Diego, and so...
That's
Not many
earthquake lair.
It's such a pleasant place to live, is it not?
It is. It's awesome.
Like, every time I go down there, there's a lot of, like, calm in a city that's still very active. It's so So perplexing.
Beautiful rolling hills, lots
right.
of palm trees.
No, horrible. Don't move there.
Yeah,
Stay out of
Stop the
Scott
migration.
City. All right. I have so many questions.
Okay.
No, I don't. I just want to hear you talk. So you're not particularly a game studio that focuses on Kickstarter games, as many studios tend to be these days.
Right.
Why is that?
Well, when we started, most people use Kickstarter for funding, and we didn't really need it for funding. So we've just, and also it's a lot of work, right? And it takes a ton of time out of your schedule where we could just make the game and release it and get it out onto the market and market it. And right, my background was marketing, so I didn't feel like we needed that we could do a good job marketing the games, not using Kickstarter. That said, one of the weaknesses of not using Kickstarter is that we don't have a direct relationship with all of our customers, right? Like a company that only uses Kickstarter knows exactly who all their core early adopter customers are, and we don't. So we've run some. And generally when it's us entering into a new category, so when we did our first RPG with Overlight, we ran a Kickstarter because we wanted to form a connection with role players that normally wouldn't think of us as a role-playing company.
Smart.
Yeah. So
It's almost like you've done this for a long time, this marketing thing.
maybe. I mean, it's a little trial and error too. So
Well, and also it seems Kickstarter, a main benefit is it's essentially counting how many copies you need to print and then some on top of that so you don't have 490 sitting in your garage.
Right.
But that hasn't been an issue because you just sort of like, what are other ways in which you have saturated the industry without that tool as one of your main go-tos?
So, I mean, part of it is forecasting, and again, like just being able to forecast and have a good feel for how many you should print, staying on top of the velocity of your sales as it's happening, and then getting a reprint going, right? Like you can print way too many and go, I think I'm going to sell 20,000 copies of that game. And that could be a pretty expensive mistake, right? If it goes wrong, you start out with 5,000 copies, which is still a pretty healthy print run in our industry. So Lanterns was a good example, right? We started off and Lanterns, we sold out in the first 7 days. Like we were done.
Wow.
Because we did a really good job of pre-marketing that. So the Kickstarter was pretty modest, but that gave us a nice, core early adopter base. But then I went around and I teased it with all like the biggest stores in the country and got to meet with them and showed them the game. And we actually ran this promotion. We picked the 10 top stores in the country and we offered them each, if they would take 50 copies of the game, the condition was that they had to put it on a feature table showing the game and be able to sell it or demo it or speak intelligently to it for 6 weeks.
Well, good deal.
Yeah.
And we would take any copies that they didn't sell back. At the end.
Whoa.
And what we wanted, though, is if they were successful with it, we wanted them to share that success and let other retailers know. And all but one store sold out of their 50 copies within 6 weeks. Some of them sold out within a couple weeks. And then we sold out in the industry. Like we were done.
So
amazing.
That's kind of actually a bad thing, right? I mean, it's a good outcome, but like you didn't prepare enough for like,
right.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
Right. But we're pretty aggressive with reprint, so we didn't wait to pull the trigger on a reprint until we were out. We saw the velocity and the buzz that it was getting, and we started a reprint about 30 days before the first printing even released. So that gave us, a window where as the publisher were really only out of stock for about 4 to 6 weeks. And there were still games out in the channel.
Yeah,
right?
you can still take orders at that point.
Right.
Do you think being a former game store owner gave you this trick up your sleeve of, no, I'm going to go directly to store owners because I know the impact they have on their client base
for sure.
of their regulars in a way that maybe other people haven't always thought to tap into?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And then I grew up as a kid in retail as well. My family's business was retail, and I also did a lot of purchasing and buying and kind of grew up in that environment. So all those things have just kind of been ingrained in me, I think, from my first job working for my family's business, 13 years old.
Just comes naturally.
Yeah.
So you always have to gauge differently, kind of based also on the game, not just the hype too, right? Like Terror Below is a different printing order than lanterns, for instance.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Or even we find that the heavier the game gets, so heavier games, higher price points, right? You're going to sell less.
Yes.
In general.
Yes.
Something might break out and become a huge hit, but the chances of that happening are smaller. Just because that audience, right? It's like a triangle. The people that want to play a 3-hour or 2-hour super heavy Euro game there's just less of them than people that will play a more accessible gateway level game that, also only costs $20 or $30 that you can play in 30 minutes. So you're just going to sell less. So you just have to plan for that. It's a bigger risk, right? Like a $60 game just costs a lot more to produce. There's a reason why it's $60.
Right. And people are always wanting heavier components with real metal in the box or a mini in it. And those things all cost money as well for an even smaller audience.
Right. And you have to be careful too, because the people that want those kind of blinged out versions of the game, they're very, very vocal, but they don't always translate to 10,000 people.
Yeah.
It might be
they're a vocal minority in that way.
Absolutely. Yeah. It might be hundreds of people. And it's a totally valid thing. Like I'm a huge sucker for that stuff. Like I want that too. But
so you believe that they're like, oh, you must be everyone.
Right.
Because you are also me.
Right. Nope.
A less experienced marketer might.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's easy to get caught up in it and swept away and listen to that vocal minority on the internet and kind of get into that echo chamber of like, oh, well, they all want this. And it's like, ooh, wait.
They all are 9 people.
Exactly. Yeah. Be careful.
I have just a little anecdotal story about this. So last weekend went to Amir, our friend Amir, threw a little party, and he said game day. And so I thought, games. And I was like, oh, I should have gone home and brought a bunch of boxes. I showed up, and there's some Netflix show called Minute to Win It, and it's like putting a ping pong ball on a spoon using only your teeth and dropping it on the other side of a table, and like silly games that are all dexterity based and no board, nothing to buy except ping pong balls and Skittles and a straw that you have to suck the Skittles through.
Picnic games, right?
Yeah,
you play
basically.
It like the family picnic.
Yard games.
There were teams and there was a score and there was a gift card given out.
And you brought Ex Libris and tried to set it up on the table.
Luckily, I was coming from somewhere else, but I was like, should I go home and bring 12 games?
Nice.
What kind of gamer am I if I bring no games to this game day? But it worked out. And then at the end of the day, gift card had been assigned, and I was like, ooh, we could play Contact. It's a fun word game where it's kind of like a mind meld type thing. We talked about Medium last episode. And you're just you're spelling out a word and giving one letter at a time, and people have to get one more letter by asking questions, and the answer to the question has to start with a letter. I won't go into exactly how to, it's a fun word game. Yeah. And somebody was like, okay, let's not play something super complicated.
Yep.
I was like, what? But this is the easiest game I could think of. They were like, let's play this game where we count to 12, and if you say the number 12, you have to drink.
Yep, exactly.
It's also not the end of the day game, too.
Well,
I will say that game, that's one of my favorite games to play, one of my favorite parlor games, and I taught it to my in-laws.
Parlor game, thank you.
And my in-laws insist on playing it every time.
It's excellent.
All right. But it is harder to explain than it is to play.
I did a much better job then than I did now.
No,
because
I
I had
always
people that knew. We did examples.
That's right.
I always struggle to explain it because it is like a whole concept to get, and then it's like just play and you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
It definitely is one of those.
So I have a question for you.
Uh-oh.
There was a gift card at stake. How competitive did Becca get? Because
probably very competitive.
Yeah, like were you
Absolutely, I was at my most competitive.
Elbowing down small children.
My team, me and Amir, whose party it was, and he was helped setting up all these games. We were second to last. It was a sad day.
Oh my god!
Yeah, it was hard.
Was it 2 people teams?
I know. It was 2 people teams. I showed up
Did
late.
you get like
missed
a red
game
card
1.
or something and ejected?
No, I did miss game 1, and then they let me make it up later.
Okay.
And I did not beat anyone because it was just like stupid human tricks kind of games. Game 1 that I missed and had to make up, you put an Oreo on your eye, and you have 1 minute to get it into your mouth without using your hands.
Are you
That's a great
This is
idea.
something I desperately want to be good at, and I tried and like practiced even after my timer had gone.
Actually, can we pitch this game to you?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
This
okay,
Oreo
it's
game?
Okay.
called Oreos.
It's called Oreo Eye.
Renegadios.
Renegadios.
No, you've already made that game. It comes in a cereal box.
Yeah,
and it's
well,
just
it wasn't
a
a
t-shirt.
game. It was just a t-shirt. Yeah, that's right. Wait, so were you laying down?
No.
How do you do? How
You
do you
lean
keep the
back.
You lean back,
And then you just kind of like shake your face a little bit.
and you got it.
And if it falls on the ground, do you have to go get it
You can get a
your
new
hands?
Oreo.
Oh, okay.
I felt bad wasting all these Oreos, so I started using the same ones.
I feel like your best bet is to like try and launch it in the air and catch it with your mouth.
I tried that.
Yeah.
Sounds solid. Okay, I have a real thing to get back to.
Okay.
You got your start in TCGs.
I did.
And living card games, and now you're going back to card games.
We are.
You just announced Vampire the Masquerade expandable card game. Whoop whoop.
We did. Yeah.
So tell us about that.
So, so we announced it. It's not coming out for a year.
So there's nothing else to say.
No, nothing to say. It's going to be really good, I think. No. So yeah, it'll be out at Gen Con, but we've got an engine. It's super solid. It plays 2 players and up. So if you're familiar with Vampire, right? Like the world, combat's part of the world, but it's not probably the core driver in the world, right? It's more about the maneuvering and politics.
The beast
and,
within.
Yeah. So it's pretty cool. Like we're really, really happy.
Yeah, I'm
with
trying real hard to get
Arthur.
embraced right now, personally. So
Yeah.
get that
There
going
you
on.
go.
It'll happen, Becca.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
It will.
It's Chloe.
Yeah. So we'll have more to share on it in the pretty near future.
Right, it's a ways out.
It's a ways out.
Do
Yeah.
you
we're-
always announce a year ahead?
Not always, but we wanted to announce our partnership with Paradox and White Wolf and let people know that it was coming because we have some plans to be able to have some early adopters come in and maybe beta test it and things like that after the first of the year. So
So basically, people should be real hyped.
yeah,
There-
it's good.
There
It's
was a
solid.
vampire game in the old days, wasn't
Yeah.
there? What was it called?
So originally it was called Jihad,
Jihad.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jihad.
and then they changed the name of it to Vampire: The Eternal Struggle.
yes, okay.
Yeah,
I
and then-
remember
Wait,
this now.
I just typed
I'm-
jihad into Google and
Oh,
it didn't
yeah.
help.
I never played a lot of these old CCGs, but I was a subscriber to magazines like InQuest,
Yeah.
which had every CCG that was ever printed. Like
Yep.
they'd have pictures of them, and I was always fascinated by
You
these ones. Yeah,
nerd.
I sat at the table at lunch and pretended to not look at it.
That's right.
Had it inside of a football magazine.
That's right. You're like, how did this get here? Who left this on the table? This isn't mine.
Just don the helmet that's clearly I got at Goodwill.
Still got a tag on it.
That's right.
Yeah, I just remember all those,
Yeah.
and it's so fascinating. So they used that was a short print. Like that game didn't last for a long time, did it?
Yeah, it was around for a while, I think, and it changed hands. Like it was at Wizards of the Coast, and then it moved around for a little bit. I think it's still being. Somebody has the license right now to still print it in, I think, non-collectible, like reprint the old cards.
Really?
I'm not totally familiar with what's going on, but it was a really good game. I played it. It was a little long,
Yeah.
right? Like, and it's definitely a product for its time, but
Yeah.
it's a really solid game. What we're doing now is, I would say, true to that experience.
Yeah, what can you tell us about it?
Yeah, I mean, not too much more. So it's, like I said, it's 2 players and up. Definitely the multiplayer experience is a core part of the game. But you can play 2 players, which in the old game, you really couldn't play just 2 players.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you had
You
to
had
play
to play the clans
multiplayer.
and stuff.
Yeah, well, you just needed more than 2 people, and it really was probably best at 4.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, but it was a long game. Like you would play for 2 hours plus. Yeah, I'm really happy with this, and it scales nicely. We'll be able to bring in other things down the road. So we're starting with Vampire, but hopefully
See where else it
there'll
can
be some
go.
opportunities. There's a very large world of darkness out there.
But hold on. You told me that when you make a game with an IP, you start with the IP
We do.
and go from there.
We do.
You tell me this engine's going to be implemented? I guess it's all World of Darkness.
It is. We might actually be taking other things. We might be planning for the future. So that way,
Expanding the
yeah.
darkness.
So that's another trap that a lot of
Podcasters put you in when they ask you questions.
No. Yes, I'm very offended. I'm storming out. So, no, designers a lot of times, like especially in a serialized type of game, like a collectible card game or anything that's expandable, it's hard to plan for the future. So you do sometimes want to take a step back from your design and your plan and say, what is this game going to look like in year 3? Or what is this world going to look like in year 3? What are the things that we might want to do? Are we doing anything now that's going to keep us from doing that and put us in a tough situation where we have to, kind of ham-fist this thing in there, or it just won't be possible? So we try to take a step back and say, well, what if we bring in other elements from that catalog? And I don't want to put it out there and have people go like, oh, it's happening. It's not, but it might. And we want to be prepared for it if it does.
Right.
So,
it all depends. If people are clamoring for more of this game, then
exactly.
You have a plan.
Right. Yeah.
So
we have things that we want to do. We'll see if we get to do them all.
What I'm getting as a theme of what you do, Scott, is what your contribution to creating your own game studio and you are the master planner. You are the mastermind. I was right.
Guess.
That you are the one that is able to step back and say, what is a hole in the industry that Renegade can fill?
Yeah. I play devil's advocate a lot, like within the company. Like sometimes I think drive people a little crazy because I'll come in and say like, hey, what if we did this? And I'm the first one to admit that I'm going to throw out tons of what ifs, and they're not always good. But the point is I want us to think through it and see if we can come up with something that's different or good.
That kind of reminds me of what Rob Davio said when he came up with the idea for a legacy game of writing down on a whiteboard any possibility. In a brainstorming session, there are no wrong answers.
Right.
And so that's the spaghetti that you're throwing at walls.
Yeah.
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 It seems to have stuck. And speaking of sticking, another really, really popular Renegade game in your
Good transition.
5 years is a really spaghetti-ish transition. Clank. We haven't talked about Clank.
Yeah.
Clank is huge.
Yep. So
are there Clank stories? How did it come about? How'd you find it?
So there is a Clank story. So Clank comes from our partners at Direwolf Digital. And I have a long history of working with them before they were even Direwolf. The owner and a lot of the people there were our partners back in my Decipher days on our Lord of the Rings online trading card game. And now there's a lot of people working there that are former Decipher designers as well. So it's a big company, but there's definitely some of that old guard there.
And they are digital first, yes?
They're a digital studio. So they primarily focus on their core competency, back in the day was digital TCGs. Like they were really the other company doing digital TCGs after Magic launched Magic Online back, in the 90s. So
how'd they make such a perfect tabletop game?
I mean, they're game designers, right? And ironically, I was going out and spending a little bit of time with them, talking about one of their digital projects, and we would play tabletop games that they had designed. That I don't know if they had like really any plan for it. They all love tabletop games, and we would play games, and we talked about like, well, we should put some of these out. And there was one game in particular that we played that I really liked. I thought it was fun. It had a lot of potential. And then
called There Is a Dragon Underground and You Must Steal Its Stuff.
It's not what turned out to be Clank. It's something else, and you haven't seen it yet.
Ooh.
So, and I don't know, maybe you will someday. But then 6 months or so passed, and Scott Martin's over there called me up, and he's like, "Hey, let's move on this. Let's make a board game together." And he said, "We're going to send you a prototype. Check it out and let us know what you think." And I thought it was going to be this other game, and it wasn't. It was what turned out to be Clank, and it was pretty funny, right? It was your typical prototype. Like the map was drawn out on a piece of white, like almost like butcher paper by hand, and the cards were, just proxy cards put in sleeves and stuff. And I was about to go out of town to some convention, and I wanted to check it out. So I set it up on the table, and I had nobody to play with. So I played a 4-player game all by myself, and it took like 3 hours, right? But I wanted to I just wanted to knock it out before I had to get on a plane the next day.
But just like in middle school, no one bothered you.
No, nobody bothered me. I was the weird kid playing games with himself. So played a 4-player game with myself, literally moving around the table,
Who won?
And it's a deck builder, so it's easy, to get into if you've played a deck
Evil
builder.
Scott.
Evil Scott won.
That's
Okay,
right.
cool.
Yeah.
It's also Angelic Scott, Mischievous Scott, and
Neutral Scott.
Neutral Scott.
Neutral Scott. That's right. And we really liked it, and it was great, and we put it out, And
We being all four Scots.
all four Scots. Well, ironically, the owner over at Direwolf is also Scot.
Right. All five Scots.
All five Scots, yeah. So there you go. Yeah, and it's done really well. And now the next thing coming up is Legacy.
Really? Clank Legacy?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
We unboxed
Who's
it.
working on it?
Right, so the Direwolf team did it. It is premiering at PAX West. We're
How
going to
dare
have
you put Legacy on a game without Rob's name somewhere
I know.
nearby.
Poor Rob. He started. Well,
Yeah, he's really struggling. Yeah.
I know. I know. Someday maybe he'll make it.
I think he was the most listed person at Gen Con this year on all kinds of banners.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it'll be at PAX West, and we'll have a small amount of it there early, we hope, if it makes it. It's being flown in, especially for PAX West.
Whoa.
Wow.
So yeah, you'll be able to check it out there, and then in about a month or so later, it'll be out in stores.
Right on.
Yeah. I think we can get you a copy, Becca.
Me?
But I
Oh my gosh, PAX West is coming up August
Yeah, it's
30th
soon.
to September 2nd.
Yeah.
And you're going to be there?
I personally probably will not.
Oh, you get one off.
Yeah.
That's fair.
That's right.
Total segue. What's it like going to all these cons all this time? You know, going from having no booth 5 years ago to having the most epic booth at Gen Con that I already talked about last year because I think we're sponsoring Renegade.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great. We'll put a sign out front. Make it
Yeah,
official.
just a little slip in all your games would be great.
Okay.
We have some postcards to give
Oh,
you.
we could do that for you.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, but what is it like seeing this thing that you created become so big so quickly?
I mean, it's fun, right? Like it's very satisfying. The whole team puts in a lot of work. I push a lot. So, everybody rises to the occasion. Like Gen Con's a good example. We've outgrown our booth space, but booth space at Gen Con is at a premium, and we really couldn't get any more floor space
It really
in
is
the
now.
in the hall. And they had offered us an event room, and I said, well, I mean, an event room would be fine, but if we do it, like, I want to be able to, skin the front entranceway and make it an experience and everything else. And as long as we're allowed to do that, then we'll give it a try. And so that's what we did this year, right? I
think it worked really well. And
Yeah.
I did talk about the skin of the room.
Okay.
And there's a picture on the Renegade Facebook page if people want to check out what I keep talking about.
Yeah, it was cool. So, yeah, well, we're going to look to do more of that down the road, hopefully. We have some plans next year. I'll just say Vampire premieres at Gen Con.
Who knows
Okay.
what that
Knows
means?
what we'll do. Mm-hmm.
I've heard nothing.
You've heard some things.
Well, cool. Jake,
Becca.
did you ask all your questions?
I didn't. I have so many.
Okay.
But I'm curious, like, where do I go on this? Because there's so many questions I have about, like, game design and about how you choose what's great. Like, I know we've already talked about, like, you want something that's fun, you want something that's got an interesting mechanic to it.
Yeah.
But, like, what are you looking for when people are going to pitch you stuff? Something new?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Like, we want something. It can feel like there's a hole in the market, right? Nobody's doing this well, or nobody's doing. People want more of this, and there's not more of this. So we're looking for more of that. That's different. But yeah, I mean, first and foremost, something that's really different that we haven't seen before is exciting. So, clip cut parks, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about this last episode, but I already talked about 10 different Renegade games.
so this is a really good example. It's right. Roll and writes are big. Everybody's into roll and writes. It's kind of the new thing right now. There's a wave of them coming out. And then last year in Essen, these two designers pitched us not a roll and write, but it definitely is inspired by roll and writes, where you get a sheet of paper and you cut with scissors out based on the die roll so many squares, right? Like kind of Tetris-y sort of shapes. And then you have to complete puzzles on the table. And we're like, whoa, this is really different. It's kind of a roll and write, but it's not. And we were, like, what do we call this? Like a cut and place?
Cut
or
and write.
Cut and write.
There
you
is
don't
no
write.
writing.
Right, you don't write. But it has that thing, right? You rip off a sheet of paper on your pad and then you cut it, space stuff out and all that. So that was really, really different. We fast-tracked that. We're like, okay, nobody's done anything like this. We're going to get this out.
You got to be the first.
Yep, as fast as we can. Yeah.
Is being the first, obviously, a huge, when you hit on something that is not done yet.
Yep.
Yeah, you got to
For
get it
sure.
out. I was very surprised I liked this because roll and writes, I know they're popular, but there's not enough player interaction for me typically.
Right.
Roll.
Right.
Yeah, it is kind of kind of like independent.
But we played it, and I had the best time really strategizing about what cuts to make because you have to, if you roll the die and it says 1, 2, 3, you have to make a 1 square long cut, a 2 square long cut, and a 3 square long cut, and you can't make anything else except those 3 cuts, and you can't turn in the middle of the length of a 3 square long cut. And that there is so much planning you can do. And the most satisfying thing, because the cards that you're filling out are Tetris-like pieces, but a little more edges and shapes in there.
Right.
And I got one that was exactly the full shape of the park in one cut.
Wow.
With all of the animal parks and the colors included. And it was the most satisfying feeling.
She's nearing tears, you guys.
Yeah.
It's pretty intense.
It's so beautiful.
That's right.
I made a park. But I was surprised that I enjoyed it so much.
Yeah.
And I don't, when you can have that level of strategy, even though it is a game that you could essentially play, you are playing solo alongside other people.
Right. And that was the experience we had too. Like we played it, right? Played the prototype in Essen. Dan Bojanowski discovered the game. He's the one that took the pitch meeting. And, he came back and he's like, I think this is kind of special. And, and you play it, sometimes everything gets that discount. The first time you play something, it was the first time. It's the first time.
Gotta try it a little different.
Right. And we were like, we need to play this a little bit more and see. And we're like, it still feels really different and cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What did the prototype, did they have a rip pad?
They had sheets. Yeah, They had sheets of paper that, that they had, originally it was themed around building construction. So you're making buildings. And we slightly changed it to
Sure, there's lots of
parks.
games about building.
Yeah.
Does it come with scissors?
It does. It comes with
safety scissors.
4 pairs of safety scissors.
With colors on the handles.
Very clever.
Yeah.
So what happens if you're developing a game that's a little bit more traditional and you're realizing maybe during playtesting that it does kind of lack something new?
Yeah, I mean, we'll try to pull back, right?
Okay.
And spend more time on it.
Looking at the
we have
dynamics?
schedules, but so this is always the tug of war within any company. So we have Leisha, who is our logistics director, and she's in charge of all the schedules and manufacturing. And Leisha is perfect for that because your due date is on Tuesday.
Sure.
And I'm usually the one kind of in the middle of both sides. Occasionally I'm your due date's on Tuesday. You need to hit it. Other times I'm the back off,
Give them a
Leisha.
day.
Good cop.
We're gonna push this off. Or we've delayed games a year that we felt like we needed to spend more time on and sometimes tear them down and rebuild.
Do you have an example you can share with us of that? Was there one that was kind of rebuilt from the ground up?
I mean, it's hard to say. So Terra Below actually went through a lot of development.
Okay.
So Terra Below originally, or the way Mike had designed it, was about meteors falling from the sky.
Really?
Yeah.
So it had nothing to do with the thing it has nothing to do with, but maybe slightly reminiscent of a little old movie called Tremors. If you know anything about
there's
underground
definitely
worms.
some inspiration there.
I can see the meteor thing for sure because I came down on a spot and then the blast radius.
Yep.
Yeah, that's very fascinating.
So thematically it changed, but mechanically it went through a lot of iteration. There's a little bit of take that in that game, which really makes that game fun. Like you're all competing for the bounties.
Yeah.
So you need to be able to mess with each other.
make a worm attack somebody by making the ground shake all around them.
Right. Yeah. So it's really fun, but you have to balance that because too much of that then becomes a negative. So that's where the multiple heroes that you get. So you get some variety. So when a character dies, it's a life dying, but it's also not. So it doesn't feel so bad because now I get something else that's different. I get to play a different character that has different abilities, so that feels good. So I've seen comments online where people are like, "Man, I got such and such as a character, and they just weren't dying. I wanted them to die because I wanted to play some of my other characters." But that's also a negative because you're losing a life. And if you lose 3 lives,
have to reset where you are and
Yeah.
Interesting.
So
It's a
so that one took
surprising
a while.
mix of mechanics that I haven't seen put together in that
Yep.
way. That it works really, really well.
Yeah.
I
Mike came
love
up with a
Terra
great
Below.
engine, and then TC Petty was our developer on that, and he did a lot of work and really did a great job. So the two of those guys together.
So if I
came
can
up with
ask,
something great.
what wasn't working during development?
No, I think it was really just that we wanted to turn it on its head.
Okay.
And
It felt a
that
little
sort of thing. And we just needed more time.
Yeah.
And we were like, well, we just want to get this right. So its schedule is kind of loose.
And is that where like manipulating the worm's movement with the vehicles came into play? It was like where you could actually control where the meteors would land, or
Yeah, a lot of that stuff changed.
Yeah.
And then back to my earlier point, I kind of started off just joking about this, is that if this one did well, that we wanted to maybe do more in the future. So the kind of the running joke internally was that the next game will be Terror Above. And then we have an idea for a third one. And then we discussed
Terror
this
from
with
Sideways.
maybe somewhere else.
Terror on the left, terror on the right, terror behind you.
Terror all around.
Terror in your
So
mind.
Mike just sent me an email the other day. It was funny. He's like, yeah, Terror from Above. I'll work on it and I'll have something for you by next week. And ironically, he sent me an email yesterday. He's like, all right, I've got a draft.
Whoa.
So
yeah.
So
Okay.
we're working on maybe
2021.
Ooh,
follow-up.
secrets. You heard it here first.
Yeah.
Terror from above.
Yeah. It's in the works.
I picture a pterodactyl swooping down and eating people alive.
I hope it's just worms dropping from the sky.
All right. Well, we've been talking on this podcast for a while, so we should probably wrap it up. But
All right.
Scott, I just want to ask, games seem to be a big part of your life.
Yeah.
What about them brings you joy?
I mean, I'd say right now, outside of me just personally playing a game, is seeing other people play stuff that the team has spent all this time on and seeing it get out there and people enjoying it, right? Like we get a lot of joy from our customers playing our games and loving them. I mean, it's really gratifying. And it's also really cool too to see the designers and artists that put so much of themselves in the game have success as well. Like we really do want our creative partners to have that success. And, they do. A lot of designers and artists in our industry don't do this full time. Some of them eventually do get there, but a lot of them start off part-time, and this is their dream to do this for a living. So if we can have success and they have success, like it's good for everybody. So
And
it's
get
pretty
them
cool.
to quit their jobs at Google
That's right. That's the plan.
someday.
Yeah.
Jake, what brings you joy about games?
Oh man, I have been really loving the amount of social interaction I get with people that I don't get to see very often, because like I can have this event that also brings people together. One of my buddies, Ruel, Ruel's who's a guest on this podcast.
He was one of the first.
Yeah, invited me to a game of Twilight Imperium, which I have not played in like 6 months. And
Ugh, don't say that. That means I haven't played in more than 6
You're
months.
getting the withdrawals. I see the shakes. But it was good to meet some new people. Usually I play Twilight Imperium with people I know because I'm the organizer, so I'm inviting all of my friends. And now I didn't know hardly anybody there, and it was so great to meet new people. It was at a game event. They called it Jed Can't because they couldn't make it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I met a lot of great people, and it was super fun. And I forget to go do that sometimes. And board games are a great ambassador to meet new people.
Absolutely. All right. Well, visit your friendly local game shop and go to your board game cafes so you can meet new people. And
Becca, what brings you joy about board games?
fucking everything, man. It's my life.
That's the t-shirt.
You know?
That's the t-shirt.
What brings me joy about games is when I get to play them off camera.
There you go.
That's true.
No, and on camera too. But it's refreshing whenever I
Not
get
have to perform at all.
time to do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not have to
for
be
sure.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As fun
That's
as it is
fair.
that I get to do this all the time.
Sure.
When I get to just play a game and not also entertain, it's like next level.
Bam.
Yeah. Well, that seems like a perfect place to end. But first, what's one thing that has absolutely nothing to do with gaming that you love?
Nothing to do with gaming that I love. So I do spend a lot of time camping and backpacking.
Oh, right. You were telling me.
Yeah.
Why?
Probably
Why is it?
Probably on average like once a month. I'm off somewhere on a weekend doing something. So
Yeah.
I've been doing it with my sons for a long time, and my youngest now is he'll be 13 next month. So and he's just gotten into backpacking and stuff. So yeah, we're going to be backpacking the next 3 months, one weekend a month.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And
Awesome.
something I saw you yesterday, and you told me that a great perk of that is that no cell phone reception.
Yeah, it's true. Like not having the cell phone reception is almost like a gift to me because I can say, nope, no reception. I can't check in, and it forces me to disconnect for a while. But I think that also is better than when I come back, have that short little break, of a weekend. I'm disconnected because I'm working all the time, right? Like we're in Slack and it's just never stops.
Yeah, you can't turn off.
Right. Yeah. But having that forced turn off is really good.
The literal quiet and the figurative quiet of being out in the wilderness, right? Because you get you get the city sounds gone, but you also get the interactions with everybody gone. The notifications are gone.
Jake, you also are a big hiker in beautiful places. I see your Instagram
yeah,
story.
Yeah, for sure. I like to get out of Wi-Fi reception once in a while as well.
The irony that you take videos on your phone and then post them later.
I'm still on my phone the whole time.
Nice.
All right. Well, you folks at home, please remember that you need to disconnect every once in a while. Stop listening to this podcast and go stare at a tree.
But before you do, make sure you subscribe.
Rate us. Give us 5 stars. 5 stars on iTunes. That's what we need.
There's
we
not
will
any
accept
other
no
options,
less.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, don't even bother if you're not going to do 5 stars. Come on.
No, you can't.
But rate us honestly.
If you click any of the lesser stars, I think that shuts down your hard drive.
Yeah, I think I've implanted a bug that you're going to get a terror from above.
That's right.
And below. Seriously, I'm coming for you. Anyway, thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.